Firstly, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Vishweshwar Hegde and Bhattacharjee and Venkat for standing in between Bala and me. How many of you remember Bala's presentation? Few of you. Thankfully, not the rest. I could have just walked out of here. You didn't need me here. So, good afternoon to all of you. Why am I here? Just a quick thing. The lady has already introduced me. But the only reason I chose the cultural aspects of DevOps is primarily because that's exactly what I'm doing in my organization today. So we started off this big thing about cultural shifts right from the top, and I somehow got entangled in that. So let me share my experiences. How many of you think? That's fine. Don't worry about that. But how many of you think DevOps is primarily related to agile development? Anybody? Few? But then, if some of you think that it's related to agile development, what about the non-agile people? Do they just say, we don't care about DevOps, we just do things as we do? So basically, in my mind, correct me if I'm wrong here, but in my mind, DevOps is taking agility to operations. It's not about purely agile development, but it's basically taking agility to operations. So if you say you're going to take agility to operations, it's basically about the customer, right? The business value and all of that. So then, if you take agility to thing, what in your mind, what is the typical definition of done in agile? Working software, right? So if you talk about working software, it's basically about all of that. That's what we're taught to think, right? All of us who've done the CSM certification. Yeah. Somebody said that already. So I told you already stole my thunder. Now, with the new age, shift left concepts and people who keep constantly, organizations like SFDC, we just spoke about that yesterday, and Bala said the same thing. Everybody was talking about the same thing. SFDC, for an example, the gaming industry, the mobile industry. We actually talking about, if not zero-touch deployments or one-touch deployments, we're also talking about zero-day delivery. So if you're talking about zero-day delivery, the definition of done suddenly gets changed. We're now talking about, again, this is the Agile Manifesto, so you're talking about continuous delivery. Therefore, if it's continuous delivery, you're basically taking the concept of the traditional definition of done in the purple ball there, to saying it's done, it's basically released or deployed. I'm not sure if that's clear, the green thing, but yeah, it's basically taking it to deployed. So if it's deployed, you're basically talking about multiple, we're talking about multiple deliveries in a day and all of that. Therefore, deployed, tested, completed, closed, everything. That's when we say it's done, right? So if that is done, what are the characteristics of this concept, the entire thing of Agile? So we're talking about a cultural shift. We're talking about, most of them spoke about tools, we spoke about processes, we spoke about people, and then Vishu rightly said it's not about just, and Bala again said the same thing. It's not about people, tools, and everything. It's also the cultural shift, right? So it's cultural shift. What are the characteristics? So like I mentioned to you, because Bala's already sold my thunder, I had to go a level below. So with me on that. We speak about a minimum viable product, right? Minimum viable product, which is what Agile talks about. So if you're talking about a minimum viable product, how much is right? So if you take the same concept of DevOps, how much of tooling, how much of automation is actually right? How much of people involvement is actually right? Again, one size does not fit all. So if one size does not fit all, basically what we're saying is, in our organization, for example, what we've seen is it's not just the entire organization as per se. Every team, every product team, every development team have their own measurements. They have their own level of automation. So there are different levels, and they've reached a sweet spot which is exactly right for their product, for their team. And that's exactly what I wanted to communicate through this slide. If that is about the tooling and all of that, it's basically a strategic call which your teams take from that perspective. Then the next is about the teams. We speak about small, cross-functional, co-located teams, right? So we spoke about this. But very often, we have this divide. We have the operations people sitting on the other side of the divide, probably in a different geography. At least we have this problem in our organization, in a different geography. So how do you take care of those issues? It's easy to say, hey, let's talk about a teleconference. Let's just do a conference and we can do it. But Sujata, early in the morning, Sujata spoke about the Indian culture, where we just nod for everything. We don't necessarily, and Chinese are a little worse, but thankfully no Chinese here, but yeah. So we just nod. So the other person on the line does not know whether we're saying yes, no, maybe. And every country have their own culture. So therefore, it's very difficult to understand what the other person is talking about. So we said, okay, let's do video conferences. But the whole idea is to break the walls, to bring all these different teams together, break the silos, bring the different organizational units together, and therefore make it a cross-functional team. I saw a few hands when Vishu was talking when he spoke about IT and operations. I saw a few hands. Let me generalize the question. Let me not just focus on those people. But in your teams, how many operations or IT folks actually attend your stand-up meetings? Any of your teams, do you have these IT folks walking into your stand-up meetings? No? So if you're talking about zero-touch delivery, if you're talking about same-day delivery or a zero-day delivery, how do these IT folks or the operations folks actually know what you want to deliver? A ticket. Is that the solution to the problem? Anybody? So the more important thing is to involve these people. You're talking about a cross-functional team. So why not make the operations guys also part of the cross-functional team and therefore make it a more holistic group of people actually getting involved in the development? So that's something that we took forth, and that became a big success for us. And when you talk about this team, and you have a cross-functional team attending meetings and all of that, what are we doing? We are actually moving away from the handover mechanism. The lesser number of handovers you have in the team, the more efficient it is. Right? Does that make sense? Lesser number of handovers, there's more. So when you go to the multiple level, the number of team members and all of that, what do you end up doing? You have more number of meetings between the people, right? Yes, no? You have meetings at different levels. So you have the organization leadership sitting in the boardroom, having a few meetings. And then that trickles down to the next level and the next level. And by the time it comes down to the lowest level, you heard of Chinese whispers, have you? You remember Chinese whispers? When we were kids, we used to play this game called Chinese whispers. That's exactly what happens here. So by the time it comes down to the last person, we've made a elephant a horse or something like that. So that's one of the biggest things. But the whole idea here is moving away from the relay approach. In the traditional, I'm not saying waterfall is wrong, but the biggest challenge we had with the waterfall mechanism is the handover, efficient handover between the teams. That's the relay approach typically. You move away from that and move to the rugby approach. All of us know Scrum, so I'm not going to explain this. But if you actually look at the rugby approach, what actually happens is there are less number of handovers. The entire team is working together, thereby making it more collaborative. And for some reason, obviously it's been proven, but this makes a happier, more cohesive team, which delivers better. Am I making sense here? So that's the rugby approach also, when you talk about the rugby approach, Vishu already spoke about this, and Bala also spoke. They spoke about the onion. Remember the different layers that get peeled off, right? Let me ask you a question. How many of you are aware of what your key goal, the one key goal that your organization stands for. I mean, that your organization wants to deliver. How many of you are aware of this? I know a few, at least. So typically what happens is the number of meetings, number of changes that happen, it starts at the top, and somewhere along the middle management level, the message disappears. Right? So Vishu showed you that pyramid, the results pyramid. You remember the results pyramid? By two people. It starts with the experience. The experience is the bottom and goes all the way to the results on top. That's called the results pyramid. That is actually, he also attributed it to two gentlemen. The two gentlemen work for a company called Partners in Leadership. So they actually built that results pyramid. One of the interesting things that came out of the results pyramid is this. The moment you start communicating the key objective or the key goal to the entire organization and everybody understands what they're trying to deliver against, it becomes so much more easy. They just align with the entire organization is aligned with one goal, right? You might break it down into group goals, you might break it down into a whole bunch of other things internally, but at the end of the day, all of us know that we are aligned with one single goal. It could be a financial goal, it could be a delivery goal, it could be multiple things, but then the company stands for one specific thing. Therefore, if you align with that single goal, it becomes so much more easier. That also brings in the transparency. We'll talk about that in a bit, but the transparency bit and all of that. But it just ensures that the entire organization is aligned with a single goal. And that's where the planning onion comes into play. When we peel off the different layers, so at the top level we have the goal, and then we have the product vision, and then we have the releases, and then we have the, you've seen the onion, right? The planning onion. Most of you, I don't have the picture for that, but I assume that most of you would have seen it. If you peel off the different layers, you get into the next level, and then you plan for the next level and next level and kind of thing. And that also relates to that sandwich approach that Vishweshwar Hegde spoke about. So the executives from the top basically drill down information, and then you have a pull thing that comes from the bottom. So all of that information is flowing top down and bottom up, and everybody are aligned with the same goal. When that happens, when all of this is happening, we basically talk about delivery. We're delivering something aligned to the goal and all of that. But during the delivery process, we also have a lot of feedback that needs to go back and forth. And the feedback just doesn't happen within development. So today when you talk about agile teams, it's just the development team that stands up, does a retrospective and gets away with it, right? True? How many of you do retrospectives, by the way? Some teams. Most agile teams are expected to do retrospectives, but what we've seen is along the way, 4 or 5 months into an agile cycle, we say, hey, we know it all. Forget about retrospective. Let's go have tea, right? So no, just joking, but if we involve the other teams, involve the operations, the IT guys, along the stand-up, we also involve them in their feedback. Then that's why the learning constantly keeps happening. New ideas get generated, and you have the improvements that keep coming into the cycle. And it's just not limited to development and QA and product owners and all of that. It's also with the operations guys, because they are intrinsic to your delivery. Making sense? I have a very good example here for the feedback thing. How many of you, all of us have seen how roads are built in Bangalore? You remember how roads are built in Bangalore? Roads are made or reconstructed or whatever you call it. Half the roads don't exist, so I'm saying built, sorry.
Roads are polished, sir.
Polished. That's an interesting concept. Roads are polished. No, but let's say some road works is being done. So what happens? Sorry? They just dig up 2-kilometer stretch. They come and dump the material to fix the 2 kilometers, and hopefully a year later, before the next election, you get the road done. They had a very nice way of doing it. I've seen this in Singapore, and when I was talking to some people earlier, they also spoke about other countries that do this. Rather than dig up the entire 2 kilometer stretch and do it, build the road, would it make more sense to dig up 20 meters or 30 meters, let's say at 8:30 in the evening or 9 o'clock, do a hard cutoff, dig up that stretch, bring in raw material the material that is relevant only to the 20 meters, fix it up, and next morning you have traffic going on that road. Customer satisfaction, customer delight, right? Does it make sense? Now, where does feedback come into the picture? If that is customer delight, think about it. The first 20 meters, you have made a mistake. You go back, do a retrospective, fix the problem. By the time your 2 kilometer stretch is fixed, I would think you have a perfect road.
That's not a good example in Bangalore, sir.
Not Bangalore, that's exactly what I said. They leave it as a pothole. Good. Actually, you're right, because this drainage work that's happening all over the place, I haven't seen a single area, a single locality where all the roads have been completed. They finish about 3/4 of the work, then they disappear.
See, that is their way of continuous employment.
Thank you for that. I was actually going to say it's the tactic to stay relevant in the next election, but you're right, it's employment. Absolutely. Thank you for that. So that's the example of the roadworks thing. So therefore, the continuous feedback actually helps us improve our own processes. And when you talk about feedback, it's not only the product quality itself. Product quality, everybody's spoken about that. But then think about it, improvements in your process, improvements in people collaboration, the whole lot of soft aspects that also gets covered here. And with that comes transparency. How many of you have seen this documentary on BBC which says "Back to the Flow"? It's slightly old. It's not very new. It's about 18, 20 months ago. There was this documentary called "Back to the Flow." Very interesting document. What BBC basically did is they took a few people from the boardroom, execs, directors, vice presidents, the CEO of organizations, and took them back to the shop floor or to different units in the organization. I like one particular episode where the CEO of an organization, it's a mobile company, the CEO was taken, and this group of people were actually communicating. They were actually talking about one of their business units, one of their stores in a remote place that was doing very bad. Absolute bad business. They were not making money. So they were actually talking about closing that store down. So BBC took the CEO to the store, and what does he see? Marketing material. They actually have announced multiple schemes, right? So like our own mobile, Airtel and Vodafone and all of them, we have a lot of schemes that keep getting announced. A $199 plan, you do this, and you get all these different freebies and all of that. So the marketing material for most of these schemes reach the store 2 months late. Most of the times, if they are talking about different schemes, the material, the SIM cards and the mobile phones and all of that for that scheme reached 6 months late when it was irrelevant anymore. Therefore, and the management folks did not even realize this. By just taking this person down to that thing, they realized that a lot of these things are more impediments rather than actual operation delivery problems. They're actually impediments. So therefore, they're breaking the walls between all of them. So the problem is this. So when you talk about transparency, the first thing that comes to our mind is we do all of these reports and we are exposed. Right? We always, most of the developers, most of the testers, most of the project managers think, hey, we put this up in Jira or TFS or one of these tools, it immediately is visible right to the top. It is visible to the top, but imagine, going back to the same example, the BBC example that I was telling you, you're actually bubbling up potential problems up front. You're bubbling up potential problems up front, therefore making your own operation more relevant. Right? Again, that's basically about that. And then the next one is meetings. We already spoke about the meetings, the different strategy meetings. One of the key agile principles, one of the key derivatives of the agile principles is less number of meetings. Less is more, right? Less is more, so less number of meetings. Rather than have multiple meetings, sit in a room, chat up for a long time, and then try to solve a problem. It's easier to just walk down to the person who's the cause of the problem and just say, hey, can you fix this for me? That's exactly what Agile tells you, right? You have a 15-minute meeting, stand-up meeting, discuss your impediments, discuss your problems, but then don't go into the details, walk out, have a one-on-one and close the problem. Makes it so much easier. That's exactly what we should be doing with and we already discussed this, the different things. So operations having their own meetings, development having their own meetings, and then somebody trying to bridge the gap. If we get the operations guys into our own meetings, that solves half the problem. You have already reduced one meeting, right? There was a very interesting thing when you're coming to automation. There was one interesting quote. One of the gentlemen actually told me this outside. They actually said, technology industrializes the process. Technology industrializes the process. The whole idea is this. Automation, we're talking about lean, we're talking about all of this. Mr. Vishu actually spoke about the knowledge era and the industrial era, right? He says we're moving away with development, with the current concepts of development, agile development and all of that. We're actually trying to go away from the industrial era and go into knowledge era because there's a lot of collaboration and all of that. Small thing which I disagree with here, primarily because you think about DevOps. Think about what we do in the DevOps arena. One of the key things that we do with DevOps is automation. And where does automation come from? Industrial era. Think about it. Ford. We spoke about Ford. What does Ford do? They take a piece of metal, they take a piece of iron, shove it at one end of the production line, they have a car at the end. Isn't that what we're trying to replicate in our DevOps? True, that's what we're trying to do with a lot of automation, but there's a lot of mind work that's also involved. So therefore, I'm not going to trivialize that further, but a lot of mind work. But the point I'm trying to do is, let's not forget what we learned over hundreds of years from the industrial era and a whole bunch of other things. Therefore, making it easier. So automation basically comes from there. And again, with automation, how much of automation do we need? How much of tooling do we need? Like I said, it is not about tooling, it's just not about automation, it's just not about people. It's also a lot about culture. It's about what our teams do together. So there could be a lot of handovers, there could be a lot of handoffs, there could be a lot of interactions between people. And when it comes to tooling and automation, we just need to do what is right. We could basically get the entire length and breadth. So for example, we had a discussion on the TFS platform. I know a lot of people use open source. We spoke about open source versus homegrown tools versus commercial off-the-shelf tools. All of them are there. But then you buy a platform, you buy a $500,000 platform, so to say, and then use 20% of the features. Is that lean? Is that solving a problem? There was another concept, very interesting thing that came out in one of our discussions. It basically said, is it easier to actually start a development project for the DevOps tools, start at the base and build ground up? That could be the right solution, I don't know. But we need to find the right fit for the organization. And for all of this to happen, for all of this what we're talking about to happen, it's just not about the development and operations team taking a decision. It's actually, a lot of things actually come from the top. We need executive buy-in and all of this. So we spoke about the onion, so the sandwich approach. So a lot of executive intervention, and that's exactly what we're talking about. So with a cultural shift, it's just not one level, it's multiple levels, top down and bottom up. So we basically spoke about this minimum viable products. So just in text, what we spoke about, smaller focus teams, collaborative continuous development, loosely coupled architecture. A lot of people already spoke about minimum handoffs, delivering in smaller batches, transparency, lesser number of meetings, trust, automation. Sorry, it's not automation test, but it's just automation. So we know this proverbial wall, right? You know the proverbial wall between dev and ops, and we spoke about this. Common. It's very. Developers are constantly trying to innovate, and they're trying to disrupt normal operations. And operations are basically saying, "Hey, I want stability. Wait. We just check this. We'll test this properly." So dev immediately, what does dev say? Dev says, "Ops don't understand," and ops says, "Dev doesn't understand." So we already had that whole thing. I think Bala already discussed this in detail. And what do we end up doing? Throwing the ball over this. Actually, we in one of our exercises, we played a game. We took a whole bunch of people, put a curtain between them, and asked them to throw balls. So one team was throwing the balls, and the other team was trying to hold the balls on the other side. And we found out, I don't know, some of your teams could be much better, but we found that less than 30% of the balls were actually being held by the other team. That's exactly what we do with development. Hey, this is perfect, working perfectly well in the development machine. Why is it not working in your machine? Oh, sorry, I forgot this DLL. Basically, removing this wall. But you know, the point I was trying to make this is, it's common. We keep talking about the wall between development and operations. We keep talking about building collaboration between development and operations. But what about the bigger picture? Today, most of our organizations are in silos this way. Do you agree? You see a lot of silos in the organization. How about bringing this all together? Of course, I mean, it's easy to say, but at least one step, bringing IT, the operations teams and the development together. We've done that. So in my own organization, most of the operations, the engineering operations, the DevOps teams, the operations guys sit within development. So we've tried to break that wall. How many of you, okay, let me ask you this question. It's just digressing from the topic because I think I've bored you enough. How many of you believe that the Earth goes around the sun in an elliptical orbit? Dr. Brian Still spoke about this yesterday. Guys, you've forgotten. The Earth goes, all the planets go around the sun in an elliptical orbit, right? It's a small video I'd like you to see. So it says the elliptical, the old heliocentric approach about planets going around the sun is, that's what we think, right? That's what we are taught. For the last few centuries, we taught about this, right? The solar system itself moves through space at a speed of 70,000 kilometers an hour. Think about this. Solar system is moving. And to add to this, the solar system is moving at 70,000 kilometers an hour. Add to this, just Earth. I'm not even talking about the other planets. Just Earth keeps adding additional weight of 1,700 tons every year through meteors and comets landing on Earth. We're adding 1,700 tons every year. Basically meaning that the ellipse that we thought, the elliptical orbit that we thought, could not be sustained for such a long time. Think about it. Mass, your mass is changing. Velocity will change. Everything up. Just time up. But let me just finish with this video. So everything is changing. So what is it? So basically, if you take this concept, the entire solar system, if you look at the sun and all the planets, I would think it actually looks like a vortex. It's like a typhoon, like a vortex going around the solar system. Does it make sense? So why am I talking about this? Our very basic concepts, the concept that we've been taught to think for the last few centuries, that itself is getting destroyed. The very basic concepts are getting destroyed, are being challenged today. And with DevOps, it's primarily that, disruptive technology, disruptive way of thinking. And with mobile and with the new age um, cloud computing, and a whole bunch of other things. What we are basically doing is trying to reinvent all of this. We're trying to just change the way we are delivering software on a regular basis. And we spoke about 0-day delivery and all of that stuff. Therefore, with all that disruption, we obviously need to change the way we think. We need to change our culture and all of that stuff. And that's exactly what I wanted to leave you with, the thought about the disruption that's actually happening around. Thank you very much.
Check. Any questions from the audience? All right. Requesting Ms. Sandhya Gopal from HCL to kindly come on stage and thank our speaker today. A warm welcome to you, ma'am.